Like I want to be all I can be and then get back to New York and get on down with the Wendy Williams show.
I'm gonna tell you, I've always wanted my own talk show, maybe called Sherri. I don't know. Because I love to have fun. I love people feeling good. When I tell you the battles, people don't understand. When we are in power, the battles we gotta fight that you will never know about. Never. To keep a show on the air.
They reported y'all that things are finally looking up, y'all, for Wendy Williams. And they're saying if the signs are right, they're saying 2026 could be her biggest year yet. Now, they say just one day, honey, after the news broke that her daytime replacement, Sherri Shepherd, is being canceled after 4 seasons. It's being reported, y'all, MTO has learned that producers are actively, y'all, working on a plan to bring Wendy Williams back, y'all, to television.
Now, let me tell y'all something. I have always imagined myself having my own talk show one day. Maybe I'd call it Sherri. Maybe not. But what I do know is that I love good energy, I love conversation, and I love when people feel good. However, and this is something a lot of folks don't understand, when you're in power, when you're sitting in that chair, when the lights hit and the cameras roll, there are battles happening behind the scenes that nobody sees. Battles to keep your name hot, battles to keep advertisers happy, battles to keep your show on the air. And those fights, they are not for the faint of heart. Which brings us to today's tea. Because if the rumors are true, Wendy Williams might be gearing up for one of the most dramatic comebacks daytime television has seen in years. And it comes right on the heels of the unexpected cancellation of her replacement, Sherri Shepherd. Oh yes, the daytime drama is daytiming. So let's start with the facts. Sherri's talk show has officially been canceled after 4 seasons. And for many people, this came completely out of nowhere. The show had built a respectable presence in the daytime space. It wasn't flopping, it wasn't drowning in controversy. In fact, it had secured major celebrity bookings that most shows would dream of landing. We're talking about icons like Oprah Winfrey, former First Lady Michelle Obama, and entertainment powerhouse 50 Cent. Those are not small names. That's heavyweight daytime currency. Ratings-wise, the show was holding its own, especially when compared to similar programs in the same time slot. Sherri had carved out a lane that was lighter, more inspirational, and less confrontational than what viewers were accustomed to during the previous era. She leaned into feel-good conversations, faith, comedy, and personal storytelling. For a while, it seemed like the formula was working. So when the production company, Debmar Mercury, announced the cancellation, the official statement sounded polished and diplomatic. They cited the evolving daytime television landscape and emphasized that the decision did not reflect the strength of the show or Sherri's talent. They even mentioned exploring opportunities for the show on other platforms. But here's the thing about corporate statements. They're often carefully worded, but they don't always tell the whole story. Behind the scenes, insiders claim Sherri had already begun negotiating changes for a potential 5th season. She reportedly requested a pay increase and a lighter taping schedule so she could pursue other opportunities like acting and stand-up comedy. She felt secure. She believed the show would continue, so when the cancellation news dropped, it allegedly felt blindsiding and far from amicable. And while fans were surprised, there was one person who reportedly wasn't shocked at all: Wendy. To fully understand why this situation feels so layered, we have to go back to how Sherri got that coveted slot in the first place. Before she ever officially replaced Wendy, Sherri had been trying to develop her own talk show. There were conversations, there were meetings, but nothing solidified into a full launch. It wasn't until Wendy's health struggles became more public that the landscape shifted. During Wendy's absence from The Wendy Williams Show, a rotating lineup of guest hosts filled the chair. Some were one-offs, some returned for multiple stints. Sherri was among them, and her guest appearances tested well with audiences. She brought warmth, relatability, and a faith-based optimism that contrasted sharply with Wendy's bold, no-holds-barred delivery. But then Wendy was placed under guardianship. The future of her return became uncertain, and suddenly the network needed stability. They needed someone who could anchor that 10 a.m. time slot without scaring advertisers or rattling executives. Enter Sherri. When it was officially announced that Sherri would receive her own show, it wasn't framed as just a new opportunity, it was positioned as a continuation. She inherited the exact same time slot, the same production company was involved, and perhaps most controversially, Wendy's social media accounts were rebranded to support Sherri's new platform, effectively transferring Wendy's digital audience over to the new show. That move raised eyebrows, because in television, branding is everything, and it felt like Wendy's legacy was being repackaged in real time. From day one, Sherri's show faced a near impossible challenge: living up to Wendy's shadow. Wendy wasn't just a talk show host, she was a cultural force. She built her platform on celebrity gossip delivered with sharp humor, dramatic pauses, and fearless commentary. She said what others wouldn't. She asked questions publicists hated. She turned pop culture analysis into appointment viewing. Her purple chair became iconic. Her "how you doin" catchphrase became instantly recognizable. She didn't just report tea, she spilt it. Sherri, on the other hand, brought a softer approach. She emphasized positivity, she leaned into comedy and inspiration rather than controversy. But daytime audiences who had grown accustomed to Wendy's spice weren't necessarily looking for sweet tea.
Critics argued that the new show felt structurally similar to Wendy's format, but lacked the edge that made the original compelling. The entrances felt familiar, the pacing felt familiar, but the personality driving it was entirely different, and that difference mattered. Things became even more uncomfortable when public comments added fuel to the fire. During interviews, Sherri made remarks suggesting that Wendy needed care and support due to her health. While some interpreted those comments as compassionate, others saw them as dismissive. From Wendy's perspective, sources say she felt sidelined and prematurely written off. Before her illness, Wendy had rarely missed a show. She prided herself on consistency and dedication. To watch her seat filled so swiftly and her brand absorbed reportedly stung deeply. There were whispers that Wendy hoped for a sit-down conversation to clear the air, but instead, narratives began circulating that Wendy was jealous of Sherri's success. Jealousy. That's a heavy word when you're talking about someone reclaiming what they once built. Now that Sherri's show has ended, some insiders close to Wendy are labeling the cancellation as karma. They argue that no one can replicate Wendy's formula because it was built around her personality, her instincts, and her willingness to be messy when necessary. But let's be honest, daytime television has changed dramatically. Viewership habits are shifting. Audiences are moving to streaming platforms. Social media clips often matter more than live ratings. Networks are tightening budgets. So was Sherri's cancellation about Wendy, or was it about a broader industry transition? That's the million-dollar question. Now, here's where things get very interesting. Multiple reports suggest that producers are exploring plans to bring Wendy back to television. Allegedly, conversations are happening about budgets, staffing, and creative direction. There's talk of accommodating her health needs, including a custom-designed purple chair that would allow her to glide on stage instead of walk, addressing mobility concerns. However, when Sherri addressed the cancellation on her show, she tried to lighten the mood. She joked with her audience, telling them not to faint or fall out because healthcare is expensive and none of them have it anymore. The audience laughed, she smiled, and the show went on. But if you watched closely, you could see that this wasn't just another routine announcement. There was emotion under the humor. There was tension behind the composure. And that's what made viewers pause. Because when a host who appears every single day doesn't get to break her own cancellation news before it leaks through an article, it immediately raises eyebrows. In this industry, optics matter. Control of the narrative matters, and many people felt that Sherri should have been given the same courtesy that other daytime hosts receive when their shows face transitions. The official statement from Debmar Mercury was clean and diplomatic. It explained that the decision was driven by the evolving daytime television landscape and insisted that the cancellation did not reflect the strength of the show, its creative momentum, or Sherri's talent. They emphasized their belief in her and mentioned exploring other platforms. But here's the thing about industry statements. They are designed to calm markets and maintain brand reputation, not necessarily to reveal the full truth. And if there is one thing history has taught us about television, it is that cancellations are rarely as simple as the landscape is changing, especially when a show is reportedly not losing money and maintaining steady ratings. Now, let's talk about the emotional moment that many viewers believe foreshadowed all of this. Not long before the cancellation news broke, Sherri had a deeply emotional segment discussing renewed criticism surrounding Tyra Banks and her long-running competition series, America's Next Top Model. As streaming platforms revived interest in the show, social media conversations resurfaced about how contestants were treated and whether certain challenges crossed the line. Sherri defended Tyra, while also acknowledging that mistakes were made. She pointed out that Tyra was navigating a difficult industry as a young Black woman and fighting for diversity long before it was trendy. She highlighted how the show eventually featured contestants like Isis King, one of the first openly transgender reality TV contestants, and Winnie Hollow, who brought visibility to vitiligo in high fashion. But what truly resonated wasn't the defense itself, it was what Sherri said next. She spoke about the battles hosts face to keep a show on the air. She described being put in positions where you are told, if you want to stay on the air, this is what you have to do. She talked about weighing options, making decisions in survival mode, and later, looking back in hindsight, wishing certain choices had been different. When you rewatch that clip now, knowing her show would soon be canceled, it feels layered. It feels less like commentary about Tyra and more like a glimpse into her own experience. Was she subtly revealing that she had been pressured behind the scenes? Was she hinting that she refused to compromise in ways the network expected?
There is a growing theory that Sherri's positivity may have ultimately worked against her. During her run, she leaned heavily into inspirational content, faith-based encouragement, and family-centered storytelling. While that approach resonated with a portion of her audience, daytime television has historically thrived on sharp commentary and cultural buzz. When Wendy Williams held that 10 a.m. slot, viewers tuned in for fearless celebrity tea, bold hot takes, and moments that would dominate social media by lunchtime. Wendy built a brand on unpredictability and edge. Sherri, by contrast, cultivated warmth and safety. And while there is absolutely space for positivity in media, networks often chase what trends, and controversy trends fast. Behind the scenes, reports suggest that Sherri had been negotiating for a significant pay increase heading into a potential 5th season. There are also claims that she wanted to consolidate taping days so she could pursue acting and stand-up opportunities more aggressively. From a business standpoint, that is not an unreasonable request for a host who believes her show is performing well. But if executives were already questioning growth projections, those negotiations could have created tension. Allegedly, the relationship between Sherri and Debmar Mercury began to sour last year. Despite respectable ratings and revenue stability, renewal talks reportedly stalled. Then, suddenly, the show was confirmed to end in the fall. Insiders claim Sherri was blindsided, expecting a multi-year renewal instead of a farewell season. And this is where Wendy re-enters the narrative in a very powerful way. Rumors are swirling that producers have been exploring a return for Wendy due to sustained fan demand. While Sherri maintained stable numbers, she did not dominate the daytime conversation in the way Wendy once did. Networks are constantly looking for rejuvenation, something that will spike ratings, generate headlines, and attract advertisers. Wendy has historically delivered all three. Bringing her back would not just be nostalgic, it would be strategic. It would signal a return to boldness and unpredictability, which many believe daytime television currently lacks.
If reports are to be believed, production is allegedly preparing an extensive support system for Wendy's potential comeback. There are whispers of a multi-level penthouse in New York equipped with an elevator to accommodate her lymphedema and mobility challenges. There are discussions of a custom mechanical purple chair designed to glide her onto the stage rather than requiring a traditional walkout. In addition to that, she is rumored to receive 2 full-time drivers, a personal chef, and a life coach to support her sobriety and overall wellness. Allegedly, Wendy has agreed to random and scheduled testing in exchange for this structured support. And perhaps most notably, there are claims of a retroactive multi-million-dollar payout to address how abruptly her departure was handled. At the same time, Wendy has been publicly fighting to regain control over her life. Since being placed under guardianship in 2022, she has questioned the necessity of the arrangement, especially after reportedly passing mental capacity evaluations with high scores. In interviews, including one with The Breakfast Club, Wendy firmly rejected claims that she is cognitively impaired. She sounded sharp, self-aware, and determined. She expressed frustration over delays tied to additional evaluations and the control her guardian allegedly holds over certain decisions. The broader public conversation about her autonomy has only intensified in recent months, and many fans believe that reclaiming her show would symbolize reclaiming her independence. Of course, there is also lingering resentment among some viewers regarding how Sherri initially stepped into Wendy's time slot. Reports surfaced that longtime producers associated with Wendy's era were let go, and that Sherri brought in new leadership. Among those hires was John Murray, who later faced accusations from staff of fostering a tense and uncomfortable work environment. While none of those claims were formally litigated in a public court, insiders described internal friction and morale issues. When Murray eventually exited, some staff reportedly felt relief. These backstage dynamics have only fueled the narrative that Sherri's tenure was more complicated than it appeared on screen. Adding yet another layer is Wendy's divorce settlement with Kevin Hunter, which reportedly includes a clause requiring alimony only if she is actively working in television. If she returns to daytime TV, that financial obligation could resume. This may explain why Wendy has previously expressed interest in exploring other formats, such as radio or podcasting. However, Wendy has never been one to move without strategy. If she does accept a television comeback, it is likely because the benefits outweigh the costs, financially, personally, and professionally.
So what is really happening here? Is Sherri's cancellation a calculated move to clear space for Wendy's grand return? Did Sherri resist certain behind-the-scenes pressures that ultimately cost her renewal? Or is this simply the brutal reality of a changing media environment where even stable shows are vulnerable? The truth may lie somewhere in between. Daytime television is no longer what it was 10 years ago. Streaming, social media clips, and on-demand content have reshaped how audiences engage with talk shows. Networks are scrambling to adapt, and in that scramble, difficult decisions are made. What cannot be denied is that this moment feels like a shift in power. Sherri's emotional reflections about unseen battles now carry new weight. Wendy's determination to reclaim her autonomy aligns with whispers of a comeback, and fans are watching closely, forming opinions in real time. Some feel sympathy for Sherri, arguing that she stepped into nearly impossible shoes and still delivered 4 seasons of content. Others believe Wendy deserves to reclaim what she built and never truly relinquished by choice. As we look toward 2026, one thing is certain. If Wendy returns, it will not just be another season premiere. It will be a statement, a declaration of resilience, a test of whether bold, personality-driven daytime television still commands the audience it once did. And if Sherri pivots to another platform, perhaps streaming or digital-first content will give her the flexibility she sought all along. Sources claim Wendy may be nearing release from guardianship within the coming months. There are also rumors she has secured housing in New York and is preparing to return to work if everything aligns. And if this comeback materializes, 2026 could mark her biggest career resurgence yet. But comebacks are complicated. They require timing, health stability, audience goodwill, and executive support. They also require a clear vision for how to evolve without losing what made the original magic special. The public response has been deeply divided. Some viewers feel empathy for Sherri. 4 seasons in daytime television is no small accomplishment. Talk shows are notoriously difficult to sustain. The market is saturated, attention spans are shorter, and stepping into an already established time slot carries enormous pressure. Others feel strongly that Wendy deserves to reclaim her throne. They argue that no one tuned in for polite conversations. They tuned in for bold commentary and unfiltered opinions. And here's the reality. Both women can be talented. Both can have worked hard. Both can have valid experiences. But television is ultimately about numbers, cultural impact, and longevity. So now we're left with the ultimate question. If Wendy does return, will audiences show up the way they once did? Has the culture shifted too much, or is there still a craving for that classic, fearless daytime energy? And if Sherri attempts to relaunch her show on another platform, will she find greater success outside the traditional syndicated model? Daytime television is evolving. The rules are different now. But one thing remains constant. Audiences connect to authenticity. Whether that authenticity comes with glitter, gossip, grace, or grit, that's what keeps people tuning in. So I want to hear from you. Would you like to see Wendy Williams back in that chair? Do you think Sherri was treated unfairly? Or was this simply the cycle of television doing what it does best, replacing and reinventing? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on those notifications so you never miss the next sip of tea. All right, baddies, I'll see you in the next one.